My name is Derek Dotson, and I'm the founder of the Black Sanctuary. I'm here to provide some law enforcement education for you so you can think critically about safe police interaction. In this segment, we're going to be talking about the banning of chokeholds in law enforcement. A little disclaimer here. These are not my ideas. This is what it is. It's important for you to know the laws for where you live and for what you do. So let's get into it. The banning of neck restraints or chokeholds in law enforcement has been something in police reform that's been highly misunderstood. In law enforcement or in policing, it's called the LVNR, the lateral vascular neck restraint. In this technique, a fighter will wrap their arm around their opponent's neck. Their elbow will be in line with their opponent's chin so not to cut off their airway. And their bicep and forearm will be pressing on both sides of their neck against the carotid artery. The carotid arteries carry blood oxygen to the brain. So collapsing these arteries for 6 to 10 seconds creates an oxygen deficit in the brain, rendering your opponent unconscious. And about a minute later, the opponent wakes up unharmed. In law enforcement, this is a very low-level control tactic. And be mindful, a person is only going to be submitted into unconsciousness if they continue to fight or resist police. Banning the chokehold was just an example of fearing something that people just didn't understand. Now, the first thing that people like to bring up is Eric Garner. Let's be clear, that was a horrible tragedy that we all witnessed and that his family had to experience and should have never happened. But let's talk about some facts regarding that, though. Chokeholds were banned in New York City at the time of Eric Garner's death. What does that tell you? It should tell you that just because you ban something doesn't mean that it won't happen. Hell, rules get broken all the time. But when you ban a technique like chokeholds, you're not just solving a problem, you're creating a new one. So let me paint this picture for you. An officer trains the LVNR technique throughout their academy. Then, after their academy, these officers, they do their defensive tactics training for 2 hours twice a year. I'll get into that nonsense shortly. But the point is, after training a technique like this with repetition, it becomes muscle memory. And after you train it with repetition, it might become automatic. The problem with stopping a training like this is you might maintain the automatic response, but you lose your proficiency, meaning you're probably not very good at it. Let us use this analogy. The National Football League, otherwise known as the NFL, for a very long time, their players received a lot of head trauma from the game that they play. It's called chronic traumatic encephalopathy, otherwise known as CTE. This was a result of the hits that players took week after week throughout their career. This was an issue for a very long time, but the NFL ignored it. Actually, you couldn't even tell a player had CTE until an autopsy was being done. This resulted in a lot of players suffering and dying before anything could be done to help them. Kind of like police brutality. Fast forward, once it became undeniable, the NFL Players Association made sure that adequate changes were being made. They stopped the crackback blocks. They stopped the blindside hits. No more targeting the head. No more hitting a defenseless receiver. And if you did any of those things, there were hefty fines and game suspensions. And by the way, some of those players still made those hits, even though they were banned. One of the best things they did is they reevaluated tackling. Head up, wrap the legs, shoulder to torso, pull, drive to the ground. They reevaluated and they retaught it from the NFL to the NCAA to high school football to Pee-wee football. They didn't ban tackling. They addressed the technique and they trained it better. If it was up to government officials in Washington State, for instance, one of the first states to ban chokeholds in the new wave of police reform, the NFL would now be known as the National Flag Football League. Mixed martial arts. There's a sport for you. Millions of people watch these warriors like Anderson Silva and John Jones and Adesanya, both men and women, round after round, beating each other to a pulp, breaking eye sockets and noses and jaws, bleeding out of every hole in their face. And at the end, one opponent is gonna wrap their arm around their other opponent's neck, and they're gonna render them unconscious. And guess what? No one dies. Why is that? Training. Now, I mentioned earlier that some of the law enforcement training is absolute nonsense. For instance, most people don't know that after their academy, most police officers only train for a few hours a year. For instance, chokeholds may have only been trained 2 hours twice a year, 4 hours per year. Tell me anything you're gonna be good at if you only train that much. Me or any other kid that played high school football, you practiced 15 to 20 hours a week, and that was after a full day of school. You don't ban a technique just because someone had a problem with it. You learn how to train it better. You don't quit. You work on perfection. You don't do it till you get it right. You do it till you can't get it wrong. You start working towards mastery. So as it stands, what are the options for police officers in gaining compliance? You can get pepper sprayed. You can get tased. You can get beat with a baton. They can sit on your chest and thump on your face. Or if you decide to fight police, they can put you in a chokehold, render you unconscious, put you in handcuffs, and you'll wake up in the back of the police car, refreshed after a brief nap, on your way to jail. So in summary, banning chokeholds is taking away a less than lethal option for law enforcement officers. Don't ban techniques you don't understand. Let's focus on making sure that they're trained better. Look, I want you to consider these options, folks. Call your state senator. Call your congressperson. Let them know what you've heard and let them know how you feel about it. If you'd like to learn more, please visit our website at theblacksanctuary.com. And if you have any questions, please leave a comment below.